Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old, to history, to anecdotes, to really wherever our whims take us. Is looking at drama and controversy from the past a whim? I guess for me it is. I personally find past controversies so interesting. There's so many angles to approach it from and to examine, whether you're really attached to it or not. All of that is a build up to be saying we're going to be talking about Spider-Woman #1, the variant cover from 2014. Is 6 years long enough? Is it safe? Can we emerge to talk about this without pitchforks? Probably not, but I'm going to anyway. We're going to talk about how it came about and what people thought about it, which I'm very excited for because you know something like that comes with many a quote, and you know reading quotes or receipts is one of my favorite things to do on this channel, especially when I get to read them dramatically, and there's going to be some dramatic quotes. People have strong passions. I also enjoy a hot mess, but heads up on this one though, might get your blood boiling a little bit. Topics like this just tend to get people's blood boiling these days, so get your stress ball, get your tea, whatever it is you need to calm down, and let's do this. But before we get started, I'm Sasha, and if you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, stick around and join us on this crazy comic book journey. You never know where we're gonna go. I don't even know where we're gonna go half the time. I just let it happen. So Spider-Woman, the Jessica Drew version. We've talked about her a decent amount actually on this channel. One of the videos we did was about her history and publications and shifts in writers and the like. If you missed it, you know what to do. I'll have links. In that vid, one of the things discussed was how after her death in her 50th issue, and then her subsequent resurrection, she floated around quite a bit for years, before securing a place on Brian Michael Bendis' Avengers book, The New Avengers. She even got a revamped origin at that point, also by Bendis, where things changed, cause she was allegedly at the time being shopped around to have her own series. That point being about 2009, 2010, but it didn't pan out. Part of it was because the plot at that time involved her being a Skrull, so if they had started a solo series, it would have been with her as a Skrull, so that would have been an interesting choice. Main character fake out, you know? However, then came an explosion of spider character mania. This was thanks to the Spider-Verse event that began in November 2014. It saw spider characters from across the multiverse menaced by Morlun and the Inheritors. Cliff notes: villains hunting down and feeding off of the energy of spider totems, and energy flowing through people imbued with spider powers through the web of life and destiny. Again, that was the briefest synopses. What this event would definitely do was highlight some alternate versions of Spider-Man, new and old, and bring attention to existing variants and legacy characters, one of whom was Jessica Drew. In fact, this event would be launched around the same time as her #1, because this was an opportunity to launch her again. Synergy. The time seemed right and interest was there in spider characters, and they were launching characters left, right, and center anyway. Spider-Woman would also launch at this point, and also thanks to her success and the variant covers she inspired, so would Gwenpool. A lot happened because of the Spider-Verse. This Spider-Woman series would be written by Dennis Hopeless, who would become known for his pregnant Spider-Woman arc. This 2014 run would be interrupted by the 2015 Secret Wars event, so there's some confusion for some about when exactly it ran because there were multiple events that happened very rapidly, so it could be kind of difficult to keep up. You'd be reading one thing and then it would just stop. It would have to stop because event Original Sin, Secret War, Civil War 2, they would hit the comics you were reading just like a truck. But you're not here for any of that. You want to hear about the cover and the booty. We're getting there, but first we need to briefly talk about variant covers. A variant cover is exactly what it sounds like, an alternate version of the cover with unique cover art. Sometimes by a special artist with a cool unique approach, or sometimes just showcasing a different concept. They're all for sales. It's a marketing tactic to entice both stores and customers. The hope is that stores will order multiple copies of the same comic with the variant covers, them under the hope that consumers will then come in and buy multiple covers, or at least that these covers, some will sell better than others. The dream customer, of course, for all of them is someone who just comes in and buys every single one. The con circuit and selling prints is also another hope for these covers and the artists who draw them. The big boom of variants, by the way, was holographic covers. Holographic covers were a thing. I remember those. Hologram. So the variant cover is not the main cover of the book. If you only order just plain Jane, you're not gonna get the variant. That will be important later. New #1s tend to have the most variants, and if you're trying to hype up a book, that can be another way to build some excitement. Though at this point, variants are so common, it's almost rarer not to have them. So the main cover for Spider-Woman issue 1 in 2014 looked like this, to which I say silk get your own cover. This is Spider-Woman's cover. I know sometimes they call you Spider-Woman too, but this is about Jessica Drew. Let Jessica have this. However, the cover in question we're going to be talking about is this one. A variant by artist Milo Manera. Manera is an Italian comic book artist and writer. He would develop a reputation for his erotic stories and art. His stories would often feature women caught up in erotic scenarios. I mean, in European comics of a certain era, that's not exactly uncommon. Barbarella, anyone? I remember Barbarella. He has done other work too, but he's more well known in a lot of circles for his erotic work. I think my favorite translated title is The Art of Spanking, because it sounds like an instructional book, like The Art of Cooking. First, you get one paddle. So with all that stated, it's hardly surprising that his variant cover is pretty suggestive. If you look at it, there's the loving crafting of the globes, the pose that is far from functional and very, very suggestive. Assume the position. It's actually very reminiscent of a piece from one of his erotic works, which of course I can't show you. This is the Disneyland Memorial Orgy all over again. But I can tell you that it is associated with his Click series and that it's on his Wikipedia and was also in the Mary Sue article that reported on this back in the day. You know, if you want to go check it out for science and research. This cover, as you may be able to imagine, especially in this day and age, caused a lot of controversy and had a decent amount of articles written about it for the time, because the time period this happened matters. So what were the people who didn't like this cover saying? Well, largely they were saying that it was exploitative and disrespectful and played into the continued sexualization of women in comics. Some just felt it was an inappropriate cover to celebrate the return of a character to a solo series after she hadn't had one since 1978. Here's where the year comes into play. This was 2014. It was the rise of the digital media news outlet, or blogging outlet. The two are kind of blurred at this point. There was a fusion that occurred between blogging and reporting that has never quite unwound itself. Digital media and blogging/news reporting had been gaining steam since the early 2010s, but it was now becoming more profitable than ever, and utilizing editorialized writing styles was being seen to get more clicks. There was an excitement about seeing fans talk about stuff, conversations that normally you could only have with your friends, or if you didn't know a lot of people into the same hobby as you, these may be some of the only spaces you could see these discussions happen. However, as time would go on, the depictions would become more and more hyperbolic, more vitriolic, and a lot more baity. These conversations, once only the purview of fan sites like Tumblr, would now become viewed in some circles as more mainstream, and some of these hobbies as a result would lose their niche status, a status that some people actually wish that they could return to. These publications began to gain a name for themselves. They began to get investors. Some of them got attached to bigger, more well-known websites, and they started to gain a reputation and sway, especially for people who were now coming to them outside of fan culture, or from different corners of it, because fandom is not a monolith. And it's very difficult to glean sometimes how people in a fandom feel, because it can be so segmented, but it can be presented as if it's one thing. This era had a lot of talk about this topic. It was a popular blogging discussion at the time, especially on Tumblr. I have to read you some of the titles. I have to. The Mary Sue article was entitled, "Marvel, this is when you send an artist back to the drawing board." They proclaimed, "The cover does not instill confidence, nor does it tell women this is a comic they should consider spending money on." IO9 stated, "Perhaps asking an erotic artist to draw one of your most popular superheroines for a mass market cover wasn't quite a good idea." Is Spider-Woman one of the most popular Marvel superheroines? Is she? I just assume everybody's unpopular. It's safer that way, except for like Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. Elle Magazine said, yeah, it's Elle Magazine, "Imagine Spider-Man in that position instead, and the concept would have never gotten this far." Take that, Peter. I know what they mean, but also shots fired. Bustle stated, "It's just plain lewd and irresponsible on the part of the minds at Marvel." Lewd is a great word, and people don't say it enough. It sounds like what it is. Lewd. As you can see, there's an array of responses coming from a variety of areas. They might sound a bit monolithic, but there are different concerns going on here. There are some who appear to be concerned with sexualization and depictions of women in comics, while others appear to be more upset about the fact that he's an erotic artist and that type of art, or art tinged with eroticism, does not have a place in the mainstream. Kind of, there's art and erotic art, and never the twain shall meet. X-Force. So what did Marvel say? Because you know they said something. And being called out out by outlets like this at the time was still kind of a novel thing, so people felt like, oh my gosh, I gotta say something. People are upset. I mean, if they weren't upset, why would they write an article? Oh, sweet summer child. Well, Marvel's senior vice president of publishing, Tom Brevoort, actually responded on his Tumblr, because back in its heyday, which many fans of the site pinpoint as the years of 2010 to 2014, with 2012 as a particular highlight, there were creators on Tumblr. You could talk to them. Authors, comic book artists, all kinds of people. You could ask them questions and they would answer back, and they would blog and put their opinions about stuff on there, just like any other fan. It was early days, so this was still very novel to be able to interact with these creators on this level. However, as time went on, it proved not to be the most conducive business strategy, especially as lots of communications turned more and more volatile and contentious. Many creators would leave Tumblr to maintain that barrier between the two. This especially happened when a lot of fan blogs began to gain clout and kind of transform into some of these news sites, or at least form communities where they would inform each other, which doesn't have to be a positive or a negative. It just depends on how it's used, like anything. There would be some creators who would stay on, like Neil Gaiman, but they would use it much less frequently. Also, some people would come off and become creators or bigger creators themselves. But what did Tom say? Oh, things. So many things. I think that the people who are upset about that cover have a point, at least in how the image relates to them. By the same token, Milo Manara has been working as a cartoonist since 1969, and what he does hasn't materially changed in all that time. So when we say Manara cover, his body of work indicates what sort of thing he's going to do. Given that the character is covered head to toe and is crouched in a spider-like pose, it seems far less exploitative to me than other Manara pieces we've run in previous months and years. Other writers and former collaborators also came to Manara's defense. Dan Slott, for example, stated, actually he tweeted, "Some artists have iconic styles and stick to specific subject matter, like booty. If you see him solicited for a cover and they do that, why act surprised? Seriously, if Picasso were solicited on a cover, would you be complaining the face he drew had two eyes on the same side of its head? Come on." Chris Claremont of X-Men fame had also had things to say about working with Manara back in 2010, which people found for these articles in 2014. Like, they went back, they're like, what have people ever said about Manara? We're gonna put it in here. And I'm gonna do the same thing because what he said was interesting. The utterly intriguing, amusing thing is how close he comes throughout the book in terms of presenting the character, how he just gets as close as he can to crossing over Marvel's line of disapproval, but not quite. At the same time, he gets away with presenting the characters in all the glory Milo loves to do, and I think it's wonderful. So that's all nice and interesting in my opinion, but what did the man himself say? Because he also had things to say, and I know you want to hear them. You do. It seems to me that both in the United States and around the world, there are things much more important and serious to worry about. What's happening in Ferguson, or Ebola's dramatic rise, for example. The classic "don't you have bigger problems" argument. Always guaranteed to be a crowd pleaser or just send people into a tailspin. But he's not done, he had more. Unless the point is that in these days a sort of hypersensitivity to erotic images is spreading, maybe due to the ongoing discussions we are facing related to Islam. We know that censorship on women's bodies should not be a Western trait. That too is quite surprising to me. That quote went places I wasn't prepared for. I'm not gonna lie. I remember reading it for the first time and being like, that took a turn. Plot twist. So Manara felt this was an issue of censorship. This is over certain manners of depicting the female form. However, his critics shot this critique down as a strawman argument. They claimed that his work was disrespectful, not just to Spider-Woman but to all women. Some feeling that a hero should not be a sex object. To which some would reply, why not? Both men and women are sexualized in comics. However, the reply to that from some was the men's sexualization is more subtle, outside of many people's purview, and also still for the men, it's more about depicting the ideal form. As you can see, it got very, very messy and in some corners pretty nasty. Dennis Hopeless also got in on this. Everybody got in on it. He would tweet out not to worry, that inside the book, Jessica will be treated with the utmost respect. So, what happened to this cover? Well, Marvel still ran with it, but they made sure to put the Spider-Woman logo right over the butt, right over the two globes. So now it kind of looks like her own name is censoring her butt. I don't know. Does anybody else see that? One thing I found fascinating about all this and why it just kept coming back to me and why I ultimately decided to do a video on it and gather all of these quotes together in one place was because of the selective sensationalization of it. And also the fact that so few outlets reported that it was a variant cover. If they did, they buried it a bit further down or played it off like a variant cover was just as important as a main cover. Also, pieces like this highlight the rise of unobjective reporting, although you can make an argument whether this is or isn't reporting or editorializing. Although again, for some people these days the lines are so blurred that they're just one and the same. Some people just believe that objectivism is dead or unattainable and should never be striven for. Now you could make the argument that variant or not, you just didn't want this cover, which of course is your prerogative. However, the way it was sold was very much like the panda position cover was the main cover, and also it ignored the fact in lots of cases that there were other variants. This wasn't the only one. Every single one also was stylized in that artist's own style. For example, there's a Scotty Young one. He does all the chibi and the kid ones, so it's a kid Spider-Woman. Really, the appeal of these variants is if you like the artist, you'll probably pick up that specific cover. It's unlikely to find that dream customer who's just gonna buy every single cover. And stores are much more likely to buy the main cover unless they think for some reason that the variant's just gonna go like hotcakes. There's also lots of hyperbolic statements being made, like, no one wanted this. And well, I mean, I can certainly say that yes, obviously not everybody wanted it. I mean, I'm sure there are some people who did. I can guarantee that there are definitely some people who wanted this, even if they didn't know it yet. A lot of the backlash comes down to timing and climate. Not necessarily in the fact that backlash happened, but in the vehemency and how far it spread. Again, talk about female depiction in comics had been on the rise for a while. A lot of it can be traced back to Gail Simone's famous Woman in Refrigerators Tumblr post. Which, I mean, Kyle's hardly the first person to come home and find his loved one dead. They're just normally not in the fridge. Again, with side characters, it can happen to anybody. And you can show up and anybody's dead. So a lot of these blogs got in on the action at this time. For example, artist Corinne Charlebois, who ran the Tumblr Less Tits and Ass, More Kicking Ass, redrew a less sexualized version of the cover. Which, while it definitely does adjust the proportions to make it more action-oriented, because there's a difference between sexy and sexualized, if that makes any difference. Like something that's hot and something that's provocative. It's one of those things like that famous porn quote that's often paraphrased everywhere. I know it when I see it. However, I don't know about you, but without the sexual element, this cover's pretty boring in my opinion. There's nothing happening. She's crawling over a ledge. It hardly screams, oh my god, she's back, I've waited decades. But I mean, neither does the booty in the air shot. I mean, none of the covers really scream, guess who's back, back again. On her stance, Corinne would state, I'm not advocating for the end of sexy. I am saying that you can have sexy women drawn like they're actually people. I'm also saying that women have other functions than being sexy in comics, and it'd be nice to see more of that. This cover also got drawn a lot for the Hawkeye initiative, which was actually started by Noelle Stevenson, who famously did the She-Ra series most recently. It was a project where people redrew sexualized covers but with Hawkeye. Some of it was really fun and tongue-in-cheek, and some of it was pretty angry. I think my favorite thing though was the male cosplayers who would come as sexy Hawkeye. That was entertaining, and they would try and pose in the poses next to other people and stuff. Again, there were different levels of how people were taking this. Some people were trying to draw attention and be like, hey, maybe this is something that we could change and it could be done a bit better. While others were really angry and like, burn it down, burn it all down. Also with the Hawkeye initiative specifically, what counted as a sexy cover ranged. It could go from Spider-Woman butt to, oh, she's looking at me over her shoulder. Because again, people have very different gauges for what they consider to be too much or too far. So that was a lot and a lot of quotes. And I can say, with God as my witness, I will definitely quote again. What I really want to know is, how do you feel about this? Because these days it can be very difficult to have a discussion on topics like this that don't devolve into people just either wanting to be right or wrong, or it's somehow escalating to someone trying to destroy your life. This is definitely a sexual cover for sure. Does it have a place here amongst these other variants? I mean, it's basically a solicited pinup cover amongst all these others, from an artist known for that type of work. Should he just not have been solicited for a cover like this? Some are very passionately against the idea of censoring this, while others don't view it as censorship at all and rather as a matter of taste, while others feel that's a very prudish outlook. So I want to hear what your opinions are. Are you on one side, the other, the middle? You don't care? You never even knew this happened? Some don't even see the sex in this cover, for they live in a land of innocence. What's it like there? Is the weather nice? I can't go there anymore, I'm banned. There definitely has been and is a place for sexual comic book covers, but again, what is it? For me personally, I like it to have something to do with the story if it's gonna be overt like this. Again, there's a difference between being sexy and sexual. For example, what's going on in the Herogasm cover. That's a sexual cover, but it's directly linked to what's happening. But also with The Boys, that's a very mature series that was trying to outdo itself on like every angle, so you know what you're getting, Herogasms. This is definitely a topic that got picked up and spread more than it would have been in prior times because of the clicks it garnered. And also just the era it happened in. Comic book news was really big for a time period. So it probably garnered a lot more attention than it would have otherwise, where it probably might have been a variant that came out and either people forgot about or only sought out if they were fans of Monera's work. Which if you were, you'd likely know what's up. Get ready for even more questions than you can possibly answer, but I'm genuinely interested. At what point does sexy and fantasy cross the line into trashy and exploitative? Or is there no line for you? Or does it depend on the work and the context? I want to hear everything. Also, just trying to bring back the idea that you can have discussions with people and disagree or not agree fully and still be okay. Don't burn it down. There's nothing to get your back up about. Except that cover, am I right? I'll see myself out. As for me, it's not my fave variant out there, just on a pure base aesthetic level. Booty present and ready for action entirely out of it. He's done other pieces I like a lot more, but I'm really glad they didn't pull it. Now, please answer all of the things I asked you. No, just tell me what you think. I'm Sasha, thanks so much for taking some time every day to hang out here with me on Casually Comics and just go deep into this topic for no reason at all. If you enjoy this, you know what to do. All of the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. Assume the position.